Yeah, so this is the last topic for our course, which is a crisis communication and crisis management. We've heard a lot about crisis, but some of us don't know how to define what is crisis, what is crisis communications, and what is crisis management. So it is very important for us as a public relation practitioners to know and to understand this well because crisis happens unexpectedly and need to be resolved in a very good ways so that the reputations for our organizations are going to get better in the eyes of our publics and also our audience. Ready? So let us move to this topic. So as usual, these are the outcomes of this topic. First, we should be able to develop crisis communications and management skills to ensure the preparedness to anticipate and respond to the potential crisis. And then we can improve ability to craft out messages, manage the media relations, and engage with the diverse stakeholders effectively, and equips ourselves with the essential skills, knowledge, and experience that crucial in succeeding the dynamic and demanding roles within the sports industry. Sorry. Right, so are you ready? Let us move forward. So as usual, we need to first define. The first thing that we need to define is crisis itself because we need to know what is crisis actually, because if you don't understand what is crisis, then you will never know whether you are having a crisis or not. Okay, so what is crisis? Crisis is acute emotional upset where it manifested the inability to cope emotionally, cognitively, or behaviorally to solve problems as usual. Okay, so it can also be defined as a significant threat to the operations that can have negative consequences if it is not handled properly. So this is by IPR 2007, Institute for Public Relations. Right, so when we look onto these definitions, we find that crisis is something that is very serious that can harm the reputations, the image of an organization if it is not handled properly. So as a PR practitioners, we need to know the crisis that we are in, okay, and then only we can anticipate it, and then we can try to resolve it, or at least minimize the crisis. Right. Now, there are three related threats from a crisis. Okay, number one is public safety, number two is financial loss, and number three is reputation loss. So I think most of us are familiar with the public safety because public safety is a crisis that can pose a direct threat to the safety of a public, such as safety hazards, natural disasters, flood, what else? Those disasters that affecting the communities. Um, those are the things that can affect the whole community system. For example, COVID-19. Okay, that is all the what we call the examples of the public safety threats from a crisis, right? So number two is the financial loss. Financial loss means that the crisis that resulting in financial implications such as the revenue loss, okay, increase of operational cost, decrease in market share. So these all can lead to a significant financial loss, and it will somehow affecting the customers, audiences, organizations as well, right? And then number three is the reputation loss. We also often listen to reputation loss. Reputation loss is a severe damage to the organization reputations through breaking trust, okay, breaking loyalty through among the customers, investors, employees, and as well as a broader community. Okay, some of it is due to negative media coverage, social media backlash, public perceptions, mishandling crises. So these are all can lead to reputations loss. Right. So these three related threats from a crisis is a very crucial elements that we need to look onto, understand, and able to anticipate, right? From here, we need to understand how to manage this crisis. So when we say we want to manage a crisis, first we need to understand what is crisis management. Well, it's a process of preparing, responding to it, and recovering from the events that threaten to harm the organization. So Pearson and Clare, 1998, they mentioned that the crisis management is a systematic attempt by the organizations and its member to avert crisis or at least to effectively manage those that do occur. So because previously we do understand that if the crisis is not handled carefully, it will definitely bring a reputation loss to the company and as well as the poor brand or image representations of the particular organization. So in order to do so, we need to do a crisis management process, which is a systematic attempt by the organizations to avert the crisis or to at least manage that crisis from happening or from become severe. Right. Next, we do need to understand is that in crisis management, there is a process called crisis communications, right? Because when we want to manage the crisis, we need to communicate with the audiences, we need to communicate with the public. So crisis communications is collections, processing, disseminations of information required to address the crisis situation. Because whenever a crisis occurs, the public, the audiences, what they tend to know is that how serious is the crisis. What are the solutions that you have or you can provide in order to resolve the crisis? When you are able to communicate this to your audience or to your target or to your public, then it will definitely helping out in managing the crisis itself, right? So crisis management is one of the ways on how we want to control the narrative and minimize the damage during the crisis. Right, so these are the key elements of a crisis communication. Number one is preparedness and planning. You need to develop a crisis communication plan first before a crisis occurs, which means that you need to anticipate first what are the crises that might occur through the situations or through an events that you are participating. Okay, in everything that we do, we must first anticipate the worst case scenario because by then only you can develop a proper communication plan on what are the things that you need to do when the crisis or that particular crisis that you anticipate happen. Alright, and then number two, we need to identify the crisis management team and who is the designated spokesperson because it is very important for you to choose a good spokesperson because these spokespersons will be a representative for your organizations. Okay, he or she need to become someone that has a full sense of belonging to the organizations as well as how to interact accordingly to the situations and to the crisis, right? And then timely and accurate information. You have to be prompt to the situations to prevent the miscommunications or misinformations. And while you are prompting the information, you need to make sure that all information and the statements are accurate. Because once you disseminate a false information, this somehow will reflect on your organization's brand and image. Right, number three, you need to be very transparent and honest. You need to be very open with the situations. If it's a severe situations, you have to become very honest within it because it shows that you are competent, you are honest, and people will have a full of trust. Okay, we really need at this particular crisis we really need the people to put their trust on us because we are the organizations that handling the crisis. Okay, and then number four is the consistency. make sure that each time you are giving out the information, you're consistently giving the same information. Okay, that's why from the very beginning, the information must be accurate. There shouldn't be changes. There shouldn't be any changes throughout the communication process. Right? Empathy and concern. That's why I mentioned this now. The spokesperson must have a very good character because they need to show their empathy, their concerns, especially when the crisis is about natural disasters involving the public safety, right? So your empathy and your concerns towards the public, the community is very important, right? And then we need to have a monitoring and feedback session, okay, because we need to monitor the coverage and the public sentiment from the statement that we've given, okay, and then we can adjust the communication strategies based on the feedback just to make sure that the situation can be controlled, okay. And then last but not least, we should have a post-crisis evaluations where we conduct a post-crisis evaluations in identifying what are the lessons learned, okay, and then you can also update your crisis communication plan based on these evaluations, right? So these are one of the case example, okay, on the scenario is allegations of doping in national athletes, okay. So as for the preparedness and planning, for example, the Malaysian Sports Council or MSN, okay, can have a pre-established crisis communication plan that includes protocol for dealing with the doping allegations. Why? Because athletes always been linked with these types of crisis. Okay, doping, allegations of doping is famous case happens for a national athlete. So by doing this, the Malaysian Sport Council should be able to anticipate the crisis first. Okay, and then they need to come up with representatives from the MSN, athlete teams, and also the legal advisors. All right, so choose the spokesperson. All right, and then immediately after the allegations happen, the MSN should issue a holding statement, okay, to acknowledge that the awareness of the situation. Because sometimes when you are late in responding for your awareness of that particular issues, that shows that you are not competent. So in order to be so, you as the organizational representatives, the PR, the PR team for that particular organization should respond, should come up with a statement just stating that you are aware with the situations and investigations are still running, and we are going to keep updating time by time. So this is a way how you want to communicate timely and with accurate information. Right, so throughout the process, okay, be transparent and honest. If you do find the allegations are confirmed, you should be openly discussed, and you should also take your responsibility in handling the case. For example, if the allegations were true, confirmed, then you are going to state it that these national athletes will be dropped out from the team for whatever how many years, as in for the what we call the punishment, okay. And then you need to publicize this to the public and the audience because they need to know. You need to be transparent and honest, right? And then the consistency of the communication from the MSN, the athlete teams, and related party must have a unified messages. So it shouldn't be that A put a different statement, B put a different statement. It cannot be like that. So all of the statements must be standardized and shall be posted out to the separate social media platforms or any sort of media platforms, right? Then empathy and concerns. So the MSN, the athletes representatives, she shows that they are sorry for what is happening and how they are willing to take the responsibility, right? So, and then for monitoring and feedback, definitely we need to get all the information from the public sentiment, social media reactions, from the media coverage, and also make an evaluation so that if this kind of situations occur again, we can definitely handle it very well. So this is just an example how this particular um, elements of crisis communications can be used in order to respond to a crisis. Alright, so in these slides, we are actually narrowing down what are the things that you can do in each of the phases that we have just now for the key elements of a crisis communications, okay, the applications of it. So during the preparedness and planning, these are things that you can do. We can have an initial holding statement, and then we can update the statement during the investigation, and we could have a post-investigation statement. So these three things are actually a good example on how we can reflect to a crisis. Alright, still the same case, which is the allegations to doping by national athletes. Right. So in crisis management, we have done the crisis communication parts. Now we are looking forward to the crisis management. In crisis management, there are three phases that we need to understand: pre-crisis, crisis response, and post-crisis. So eventually, it's like before, during, and after. Okay. So what are things that we need to do before? What are things that we need to do during and after? So just take a look onto the next slide. Okay. So pre-crisis is actually a prevention where we anticipate, like I mentioned just now, we anticipate what are the things that might happen, might occur, what are the problem and the crisis that might occur. Okay, so the crisis management team are actually developing a crisis management plan. Okay, and this crisis communication plan need to be updated at least annually because you need to come up with the latest solutions for each of the crises, right? Because the situations are going to be varied, and it's also going to be different through the situations are going to be different through what we call through the time. Okay, so in the time we have a different types of approaches to um, resolve different crises. Alright, and then we should have a management team that is properly trained, who are able to work under pressure, who is proactive, who is always make themselves available. Alright, and then during this pre-crisis as well, we should make what we call exercises where we can do a role play or we can do a mock session just to make sure that um, the team are able to conduct the plan very well if the crisis is happening. All right. And then in this pre-crisis phase preparations, we should have, there are four things that we need to understand, just I mentioned just now: the crisis plan, the team itself, and then the pre-draft messages and the communication channel that we want to use. So as for the crisis management plan, okay, so this is just a tool, a reference tool, but not a blueprint, okay. So it's a guide actually, a step-by-step, more likely an SOP on what are the things that you need to do if A happens, what are the things you need to do if B happens, right? So this is where the crisis management plan should be, alright? And then you should have a good crisis management team who can support you, who can actually understand the processes that happens in your particular organizations, who understand the procedures and everything. Okay, and then we should have a pre-draft messages. Pre-draft messages is actually a message that we draft just to make sure that we can, it's more like a initial statement, pre-initial statement, just to make sure that we are aware with the crisis and what are things that we plan to do. Okay, right, and then communication channel is that use or choose the right channel to communicate with the public to make sure that all the information will best disseminate to them. Alright, okay. So next is the crisis response. Crisis response is where the management does and face after the crisis hit. Whenever the crisis happened, okay, how are you responded to it? Okay, and then there are two sections of it where the initial crisis response and reputations, repair, and behavioral intervention. So what are those? Let's look on to. Okay, so initial response is that you need to be quick because people want to know what is happening. You need to be accurate. All the information, data, messages, communications that you send out must be accurate, okay, and consistent. Okay, there shouldn't be changes in whatever information that you change. Okay, if you are not sure about it, so you have to mention that we can't see anything at this particular moment because the investigation is still going on. But when we have the results, the official results, we are going to give the information. So that is how we want to make sure that all of the information are accurate and consistent. Okay? And the last one is the post-crisis. So this is just a follow-up, and to know that this is the phase where everything should be very relevant because all of the information feedbacks get from the throughout the phases actually going to help you out in developing and improving your crisis communication. Right, so in this phase, alright, so you should be able to deliver all the information that you promised. For example, just now, you said that you're going to give the information after the investigation settled. So once the investigations are settled, you got the official results, you need to communicate it to the public, right? So make sure all the stakeholders were updated, okay, analyze the crisis management plan just to make sure that your crisis is not severe, right? Okay. So what are the types of crises that can occur in sports or usually occur in sports? Number one is definitely the injury crisis. For example, for what happens to Dato' Azizul before Paris 2024, and then he got an operation. So this is injury crisis because the athletes, the key athletes, are going to have impacts on their performance and also the participations on any certain event. Okay, and then we also have scandal crisis, any allegations or revelations of unethical behavior, cheating, misconduct that involve the athlete, teams, or sports organizations. Very common case that we listen to. Alright, and then we also have financial crisis, sponsorship withdrawal, economic challenges, right? So financial struggles. So these are actually the common case also that we heard before. And then we have leadership crisis. For example, the controversies within a sports organization is very, very common. Um, and then we have image crisis, negative media coverage, media relation setbacks, reputational damage affecting the teams, the sports organizations. And then we also have fan behavior crisis, where, for example, the incidents that involve unruly fan behavior, crowd violence also happen commonly when there is a football match, right? So these are also the same thing that we always listen to. Okay, and then logistic crisis, issue related to the event organizations, the venue problems, transportation delays, technical failures, alright? So um, these are actually one of the crises as well. Okay, and then health crisis when we have a pandemic COVID-19 where everyone should be participating by wearing masks, how to do a physical activities by wearing masks, all of it is a health crisis. Weather-related crisis, flood, and then any heavy rain. So this is all actually the weather-related crisis. And last but not least, the political crisis. Political crisis is the involvement of political issues, controversies, interventions affecting the sports governments and also their international participation. So, as a conclusion, it's very difficult to distill all of this known about crisis management into one concise entry, but it is always good to know that the crisis and the threats will always happen in what we call uh, in a organizations. So it's just in a matter of how good and how well are you in managing it and resolving it. All right. So with that, thank you very much for your time and your participations. I hope to see you in some other time. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.